All right, Improvisation Center is back again, as I stated, with the minivan. Remember this thing? This was in a video in the past where we went through some headache yanking the powertrain out, among other things. Stripping it down, of course. And at first, it was going to become a doghouse, but I changed my mind and decided on turning it into another chicken coop. Same as those two vehicles over there. Only difference with this chicken coop is this one's going to be geared more towards utilizing some bulk feed hoppers that I made. Well, one of them anyway, that are going to go right there. And they're going to probably, well, that one hopper is probably going to hold somewhere around 30 pounds, 40 pounds of feed, enough to sustain chickens for a prolonged amount of time, such as when we're not around out of town. And of course, I'm going to have another automatic watering apparatus with the drinker cups and everything. And that's where that bucket right there is going to come into play, along with this pipe and this dryer door right here. That'll serve as a table for it. And first thing I'm going to do is the watering apparatus because, well, personally, I think it's the easiest thing I could do right now since I'm fresh off after doing the Mustang's watering apparatus. So I'm going to mount it right there on that fender well, like I said, because all I got to do there is just put our sheet metal table thing on that and just make two legs, weld it all up on that and go from there. As far as the feed stuff, the feeder hopper is going to go right there, because I'll put some type of access hatch over there where that window used to be, because I don't think I'm going to be able to utilize the hinged window thing. It won't open up high enough in order to allow us to refill the thing. But, yep, another chicken coop. And I'm probably going to add some more trash up in here just to make it more suitable for sustaining birds. Of course, I'm going to have a light up in here, have a heater up in here for the winter time. Hell, I might even make a nesting box setup or something. I also need to make a ramp of some sort to go over that, because really this door is going to be closed at all times along with the back doors, and that'll be the main access point for the birds. So main thing is, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go ahead and get started with our watering apparatus first. So let's do it. Alright, we got our table set up right here. Like I said, we used that dryer door, a couple of pieces of tubing, welded all up. We've already got our bucket here that's had a nipple screwed into it from an earlier version of a watering apparatus. And I went ahead and assembled our drinker cup tees and pieces of pipe, all of which are just pressed together since this is low pressure stuff. And what I'm going to end up doing, if this turkey would move, put that bucket right there. I'm going to take some angle braces. I'm going to screw them in place here with self-tapping screws on both sides and use those as an anchor point to zip tie this setup to that, just like this, so it'll function. And then of course the hose will connect to the nipple on the end of this thing here. And then of course we have our float valve set up right here, along with the 1/8 inch pipe. And that's going to go through the side of the van to the outside where all that these other little adapters and all that other trash are going to be screwed in place. So I'm going to go ahead, secure our angle brackets, secure the drinker cup setup and the hose, and then while I'm at it, drill a hole for our float valve. But let's go. Of course, we also have company. Everybody wants to be nosy. Alright, got our watering apparatus pretty much set up from the low end, well really from the high end down to the low end. As you can see, I attached my angle braces as I stated using the self-tapping screws, and then I secured that drinker cup manifold to those angle braces with several zip ties to ensure that it won't just tip back and forth. And then we got our bucket reservoir right there that has the hose nipple already screwed in with a length of hose already in place for the whole low end, low pressure side to be completed. Then inside we got our little float valve just like on the other one I'd done. And give me a second, walk around here, drill the hole on through for the 1/8 pipe. And we got our adapters and our regulator right here. So all we have to do after we trench a line over to the van, we can go ahead and get a little short length of hose up to the regulator right there, and that'll complete the high side of that. So once that's all done, we can consider the entire plumbing system done from start to finish. But I'm not going to worry about the digging a trench and running a water line outside. I'll do all that shit last. I just want to get the stuff inside the van completed first. So with this done, our next thing is going to be our bulk feeder setup, which is going to incorporate some more welding of a support structure for that apparatus, which you'll get to see in a moment. So stand by. Alright, here is our bulk feeder made from a bulk dog feeder and a gallon-sized chicken feeder and a RV chimney vent piece. I actually morphed all this garbage together to make what amounts to a bulk chicken, super bulk chicken feeder. As you can obviously see, you put the chicken feed up in here, and the weight of all that chicken feed will hold this thing shut. And it'll of course flow down into here, which in turn will fill up this portion and come out of the sides, all that good stuff. And judging from the size of this, it'll probably hold 30 pounds, maybe 40 pounds of feed. Hell, it might damn near hold a whole sack. I don't know. We won't find out until we actually set it up. And that's pretty much what we're going to do now in the minivan here, if some folks get out of my way. But yeah, the plan, just like with the watering apparatus, is pretty much going to be the same thing, just having some tubing set up over there, just about next to the watering apparatus, where this whole thing will slide in place and be cradled on the sides by the tubes and everything. So all the weight from this thing will be on top of the rails or tubes or whatever the hell you want to call it, and allowed to do what I needed to do. But go get the rest of my tools back out, shoo some birds away, and try to get to work. Maybe. Really. Alright, I welded up my leg posts, whatever the hell you want to call these things, to go right here, and one on either side, and our feeder thing is going to slide in between these two, with the hopper resting on top of these, as like everything will go like that. Other one right next to it. Hopper goes right between. Easy, done. So let me get this crap welded up. Stand by. Alright, got our tubes welded in place, as you've seen, and everything fits as I intended. With the tubes as they are, I'm able to slide the bulk feeder right on in there. Everything fits in there nicely. The hopper part is sitting nicely on top of the two legs. What I'm probably going to do is put a couple of hooks on either side, one on either side of the hopper, and then put a bungee strap across it just to hold it in there as an extra measure of security, so if a overzealous chicken jumps on top of this thing, they won't knock it over. So go take care of that real quick just as well. Alright, quick and easy. Drilled a couple holes, screwed in these eye bolts, and put our bungee cord in. This little sucker is nice and sturdy now. So with that completed, we could start moving on to our electrical system. And part of the electrical system, going to put a light fixture, trying to see where exactly. I'm going to mount the box, probably right there in dead center. And then I'm going to go ahead and run wire along this rail, and then back along here. Or actually, nah, you know what? I'll actually run the wire from here, over here, and over to this little side where this door is at, since all this is welded shut anyway. And I'm going to put a combination outlet and switch box right here. And then coming right out of the door will be the cable with the plug on it. That'll be plugged up to our cord going on out to wherever the hell we hook up power to. Pretty simple setup. And with the outlet being right here, what I will end up doing afterwards is mounting, using this little spot right here. I'll add some metal to this, and I could put an electric heater right here, and that electric heater will help heat this area up. And with that area being open right there, it'll help kind of preheat the air as it works its way into the back of the van right here, since this door will more than likely stay closed all the time, especially in the winter time, and that'll be the only open spot right there. So like I say, light box there, outlet switch box there. We'll have our heater sitting right here, and that's just an opening. So go ahead and start hooking all this other crap up. Alright, we pretty much have our electrical system done. Got our box right there with the light socket in there. You could see the cable running along the top and along the door sill, like I said, coming back down using zip ties and extra holes that I drilled, going into the electrical box right there. And it's a double box with an outlet and a switch for the light, of course, and the outlet is for our heater. And then you see another little wire coming out of the box. Zoom in. That wire is our main power feed. It's going down into the door, and it's going out of the door lock, or the key lock I should say, right here, and terminating at a regular plug. Yep. So with that part done, the next thing will be to do our setup for the electric heater. And then, of course, I could go ahead and finalize the whole electrical system. Now I can throw a bulb in here real quick and test this shit, see if it works. We'd go ahead and do that. Stand by. Alright, went ahead and took time to set up our little heater thing. It's just some sheet metal here bent into the shape of a shelf and secured with self-tapping screws. And I used some zip ties to secure the heater itself to the thing, because there's a little pressure switch on there for safety purposes. And I also tucked the power cable underneath here so that won't get in the way, and of course it's plugged up to our box. I'm also charging up my phone as we speak off of our power supply, but turn that on, we got some light action. And turn this on, we got some heat action going here. So all this shit works. We really don't need any heat in here because it's already hot as shit out here. But the light is working. Everything else is working. So with that, our electrical system is complete. So now with that, we can start moving on to some of the other little odds and ends. Got to figure out a cover for our open window right there, because might have stated before, the window that normally goes there probably won't be able to open up wide enough to allow us to fill our feeder up, because in order to fill it, we're going to have to be able to open whatever all the way up so we could open the hatch on that top of that thing and scoop chicken feed in there. Behind me, I still got to figure out a little ramp set up to go over this engine bay area and outside. Maybe even try to close up some of this a little bit for weather purposes. But and eventually we got to do our trenches for the power and for the water lines to feed this thing, and put some roosting posts up in here. And I don't know, might try to figure out some kind of nesting box setup. May try to figure out some kind of nesting box setup to go in here, maybe along this side right here. But I put some roosting posts up in here and all. It'll at least give some spots for birds to roost at night. Just the floor space in here is enough for birds to come into when they want to seek shelter from the weather or drop some eggs or whatever, and of course feed. So we're going to continue our work and try to eventually finish this thing up. Yeah, just for shits and giggles, I decided to hook up a garden hose to our water line just to test the thing out and see if it works. Of course, we got our inevitable leak because shit needs to be sealed with Teflon tape or pipe dope. But got our float valve pissing away, filling up, and it in turn filled up our drinker cups. I had to put a broken drinker cup right there just to cover that hole so we don't continue to have leakage, as you could see all over the floor, but that's no big deal. It's not leaking anymore. But all in all, our little system pretty much works. It's not pissing anywhere inside, only on the outside, but we can correct that later. Our float valve is humming along. I readjust the float so it'll shut off earlier than usual. I just want to fill it up with water to see how it acts when it tops off. Yeah. Might need to tweak it down a little bit more, but all in all, it shut off like it was supposed to. So, our water shit works. Okay, I decided to simplify things by just reusing the engine hump that was in this van to begin with, and I'll just cut out a section of it. In fact, that little rectangular section right there is perfect for cutting out to make a little doorway in that thing. So I'll go ahead and put the saw to that later, open that up. But first I got to secure it though, because all the brackets and stuff that held it down originally have been more or less trashed. But we'll get that mounted down, cut that hole out later. Then, as stated before, still got to cover up all these holes here on the firewall in order to weatherize everything. And then got a bunch of tubing, miscellaneous tubing, some pressure treated boards, all this stuff. Most of this crap is all recycled or salvaged or whatever. Didn't really pay for any of this shit. But go ahead and build a ramp. Like, it's probably going to be a 2-stage ramp really, where first stage comes from here and goes down to this sway bar right here, and then the rest of it, another portion will come down to the ground level. That way it'll optimize the use of these shorter pieces of pipe and all. And right now, from what I'm looking at, I'm probably going to do a setup where I just have 2 pipes side by side and then attach these boards between the pipes to make like a little bridge floor, whatever, I don't know what you want to call it, but something that these birds can get their feet hooked to versus trying to use regular sheet metal, which they probably won't be able to get a good grip on, especially if it's all wet. So that'll be the other thing, making our ramp. But I think right now the first thing I'm going to do is cover all this firewall hole stuff up, get that out of the way first. So let's get that done. We got our firewall all patched up, scrapped sheet metal, drilled some holes, put some sheet metal screws in place. One panel right here I had to actually use regular nuts and bolts because this was where the master cylinder went, but no big deal. Drilled bigger holes and used nuts and bolts. Little panel right there is also taken care of. Everything on the firewall is, for all intents, sealed in. Now later on I might come back over this with some caulk and fill in around the edges of these panels, probably from the inside, as well as get these other little bolt holes and shit to further seal in everything. But for the most part, everything is closed up on the firewall. So now our next move is going to be to figure out what we're going to do with our hump here, how we're going to seal it up. That will be next. All right, we got our hump secured at the bottom right there on those little bracket things where the clamps used to be. I just drilled a hole straight through both the bracket piece and the metal and just drove a long sheet metal screw through both sides. Up there I used angle braces to secure the tops. I just secured the angle braces to the metal and a single sheet metal screw through the fiberglass to hold it together right there. It's not really intended to be super tight, just in place so it can't be kicked out or anything. So now our next move is going to be to cut that hole out. Alright, we got our hole cut out. The piece right there. As you can see, it's pretty much the right size. I have to tear that little bit of foil from out of the way, but it's the right size to allow any chicken to come in there. What you can also see is a pair of conduits that I have laid out just for staging purposes on that opening. Do a close-up here. I bent that metal there out to serve as a lip to hold the ends of those conduits. I'll end up either just burning some welds across that to hold it in place, or maybe driving a hole and a screw through each of those to hold them in, just so I could be able to take it down if I need to. But those two conduits are currently laying on that sway bar right now. As stated before, I'm going to cut those boards to go across that to serve as a little walkway to allow the birds better grip going up into that opening. So next move right now will probably be to attach these two conduits to the lip right there and start cutting and attaching our boards, which is going to be more drilling holes and securing the boards to the conduits. So continue with the work. Alright, we got our ramp done. 2 sections, as you've seen. First section starting up there, attached to the lip I mentioned earlier. And then it's laid up against the sway bar loosely. Our second half here, or second portion, is sort of laid on the sway bar, but attached with these little straps here. And it's laid on the ground right here. So it's kind of loose, but it can give a little bit, so we should be able to have some walk-in action here. Like I say, I cut these boards, actually used up all the bona fide pressure treated stuff, and I'm just left with this other piece right here. So we're good on the wood, got our opening right there. Ramp is pretty much all done. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put some roosting posts in here using these longer poles, and we're gonna be heading back inside. See how we can manage this, make sure these posts are long enough to reach all the way across. Might get 1, maybe 2, we'll see. 2 roosting posts in. I actually had to add an extra tube to extend the length of them in order to reach across the span of the van body. No big deal, but secured in place by a single wood screw or sheet metal screw on each side of the door frame. And with that, these should be plenty sturdy enough to hold the chickens that do decide to go up on here and hang out for the night. So now, since we have this done, I need to put some Teflon tape on the fittings for our water setup, seal that up so it doesn't leak on the outside, much less the inside. Then figure out some kind of cover for this big open window space right here. And once we get that done, we can almost consider this thing done. Okay. Looking at this open window, what I'm going to do is add a piece of sheet metal, as you see right there, cut from a piece of a dryer or washing machine, don't remember which. And I'm going to cover 2/3 of that opening, leaving just that gap right there. Then, the other problem that I have to deal with, let's walk around, is if you look in line, you'll notice that our feeder protrudes out of that window a little bit. Now, that would be a fault on my part for not taking that into account, but that's no big deal because all I'm going to end up doing is adding some material around that in order to make up for that little thing that we didn't take into account. So I'm going to go ahead, add this piece of sheet metal over this opening to close this gap, and then I could go ahead and figure out how I'm going to apply more metal to this opening so we can finish up this enclosure right here around this thing and more or less wrap up the whole project. So back to work. Okay, doing a little opening setup. After I attached this piece of sheet metal, I manipulated this edge right here to serve as an edge to overshoot our feeder thing. And then I took the other piece of metal that was actually cut from that. This was on, I think, the other side or whatever. But took that piece of metal, manipulated it to where it'll fit, trimmed it and everything. Took a piece of square tube and put that up there as kind of like another little stiffening thing or something for this piece of metal right here, because this is going to serve as our cover. And I already bent the lip right here, as you can see right there, to kind of go over this right there. I have a couple little hinges that are going to go up there. Of course, I am going to have to seal all this shit later. And then I'm going to continue to bend it and then put another bend to coincide with right here and here. So it's kind of like like that a little bit. Then bend a little lip on either side to kind of overlap these edges here in order to further help in sealing everything. And then, like I say, I'll put some caulk or some shit up here to further seal this area enough to where any rain runoff won't just run all in here and everything. This is really some shooting from the hip shit, as is the case with a lot of these projects. You just kind of invent stuff as you go along, but hey, I mean, that's how it goes sometimes. You just figure it out, put it together. If it looks good, cool. If not, tear it apart, start all over again. So go ahead and keep working with this piece of sheet metal right here until we get our little hatch setup right here and conclude this little segment. Alright, we got our little hatch done. See, we got our hinges up there, secured with sheet metal screws. Did a little bit of a crude lip around the sides here to help overlap on our sides. I mean, it's ugly as hell, but it should work. Then one last thing I did was put these little strap brace thingies here to serve as a means to keep this thing from just fluttering around, especially if it's windy. And I put extra screws so no matter which way you turn it, the thing won't just spin around. So we got that all in place. So now the last thing that we have to do before we could really say this thing is ready to go, well, besides caulking around here, like I said, as well as every other spot on here that really needs to be dried in, besides the caulk, the last thing left now is to dig trenches so I can run a short length of hose across here over to a 3-way fitting that is, or a 4-way fitting, I think. Yeah, 4-way fitting that is over there by the Mustang chicken coop. I'll dig a shallow trench, put a short length of garden hose in there like I did with the other ones, and hook that up over there, over to here. Probably put some type of post or something in the ground with which I can tie the garden hose to, so it's not just hanging all over the place and putting undue pressure on that little bit of plumbing right there. And then the last thing will be digging a shallow trench to run a power line to go over to our outlet box over there. And just as well, that's going to be crude as hell too, really just an extension cord, a heavy duty extension cord buried in a shallow trench, probably running from the post, running along this little fence line right here, and then popping up right here where it'll come to our plug right there. So once I get that little bit of stuff done, we can technically say this car coupe, van coupe, whatever, is ready to go. So everything else is functional. Still haven't really figured out anything as far as any kind of not roosting posts. Got roosting posts over there. Nest boxes. That's, if I do figure out something as far as how to do a nest box with what I have available or what I can get cheaply, I will let you know about that. But otherwise, this is going to be a wide open setup, just another facility for the birds to be able to access. They already have 3 other vehicular coops available, plus the remnants of a chicken tractor right there. So this will just be yet another one. So we'll go ahead and get the last bit of work done on this, the trenches, and conclude this project. All right, rather than spare you the boredom of watching me dig a trench with a trenching tool, I just went ahead and did it. But as I stated before, I started over here by the Mustang chicken coop because there is a 4-way line right there that I will hook the 4th hose to, route it under the car, and then bring it over to this trench where it'll then be buried and run along here up to this point where I will put a post that I will anchor the hose to when it comes up out of the ground, and then it'll snake on over, bend right over, and bam, right into the regulator for the minivan. Cover all that up, and other than a post sticking out of the ground with a little length of hose, everything else will be cleaned up right there. The other thing, our power line, got another trench dug from where the cord sits over to the fence line. The only reason that I did just this is because these old Christmas lights that don't last for shit, they're plugged up to an extension cord right here that I have situated right here. My plan will be to just simply remove that outlet socket off of that cord, because it was a repaired cord anyway, splice another cable to that, and then tack that whole cable along this board all the way over to here, and then over to here, down the fence, into the trench, run that cable all the way over to here, and then use that same plug on the end, the new end right here, where I could plug that up to. And then that way, our van will get power from this old extension cord that was feeding all these Christmas lights. Now, on a side note, if you're wondering about the Christmas lights, that's going to be a whole nother project for a later date, and it won't be Christmas lights. It'll be the same LED lights like I used on the walkway and for the storage trailer. I have plans for that you'll see later. But like I say, we're going to do that with the extension cord here and the garden hose over there. Now, just got to get those things and get all this stuff buttoned up. Stand by. All right. This little hose right here where it's bubbling because of air going into the thing, that's our new hose on the 4th tap on this 4-way fitting. And I got it routed under here. This is, of course, the Mustang chicken coop. That hose is going under there, and then it's coming up over here where the trench begins and continues all the way over to the minivan, where it angles back up and goes into the regulator. This length of hose actually came off of the double length of hose that we use in the front. It's an old raggedy hose anyway, so it didn't mean anything for me to sacrifice it part way by cutting probably 2/3 of it off and adding a little fitting on the end there for it. Have to see if any of this garbage actually seals. I'll probably have to only open the valve on the 4-way part way so I don't have as much volume coming through. But with our hose in the trench, I'll go ahead and fill this trench back in and turn this shit on, see if everything is straight and we don't have a million gushers. So let me get this filled in. All right, got our trench filled in all the way over to the van. As is always the case with this stuff, when you use garbage, you sometimes get a garbage result. And right near the end where the hose comes up here, it had pinholes all through it where the hose was leaking. So I ended up having to cut another length off of our hose where it had a previously made splice, and use that section, cut off our bad section here, add the splice section, and then put it back into the fitting right there so it ain't gushing all over the place. But yeah, we got it all hooked up and everything. I still have to put a pipe in the ground in order to anchor this crap so none of these meatballs here try to jump on it or whatever and end up damaging something. So I have to go look around, see what I got in the realm of tubes or pipes or whatever that are long enough for me to hammer it into the ground right here. But in the meantime, I'm gonna go on the other side and get the power cord taken care of. All right, got everything done on our electrical setup. I took the end of this cord that I use as an extension cord for these old Christmas lights, removed the plug, spliced the end of another length of cable to it, used heat shrink tubing to help seal it up good, then used some little U-shaped tacks to tack the cables all the way along this bottom 2x4, all the way over here to our trench where it goes down, goes into the trench. Trench is all filled in, and we terminate right here at the end of the cord where I put the end of this cord here. Have to let all that shit settle because it rains, so the ground is sloppy. But got the end of the cord there, everything plugged up, and we got some power action going on in here. Got light in here and everything, so the coop is electrified. Trying to think anything else we got left to deal with on this thing. Still got to put our pole in the ground for the water pipe, or for the hose. More than likely I might have to do some replacing of that hose, because, well, my dumb ass had to use a garbage hose and that sucker's got little pinhole leaks and shit. So that'll be another thing that we'll have to address real quick before we wrap this thing up. But we'll go back to the water line in a second. Stand by. Okay, finally got our water system situated where we don't have gushers everywhere. Ended up having to do some bullshit to this aftermarket end here because all this stuff is just garbage, really. Had to wrap electrical tape around here to give it a little bit more thickness for this clamp. Then I had to add an extra wood screw on here because the plastic was wallowed out from the original screws in order to clamp that garbage down. I put the pole in the ground, and I'm probably on a tree root or something because I couldn't get it hammered into the ground that much, but it's down, and I'm holding the hose up with zip ties. Then over here, I had to add a splice because that length of hose that was originally under here was leaking like hell, and rather than waste that in there, I just went ahead and took this coupling end right here, cut the length of hose that was still good, cut the other section out that was garbage, and put that coupling in there, as well as added another hose, a regular short piece of garden hose at the damn tap here. So we got new shit under here going under the car, and we got the old shit over there, as you've seen. But yeah, that's the four-way all hooked up. We got all the hose tucked away in the ground, all that shit. Then I had to replace our bucket, our reservoir bucket, because there were some hairline cracks in it. And can't have that. Trying to eliminate all these leaks and stuff, especially inside here. And when I put that nipple on the bottom, just for good measure, I threw a little hot glue around the treads as well as Teflon tape, so I could try to at least get some extra sealing action so it ain't just continuously leaking. But otherwise, everything is put together and more or less not leaking all over the place. So with that, I could probably go ahead and scrape some of this other trash from out of here and then throw some mulch up in here. But for all intents, the birds have actually been using this thing. They've been on the roosting posts. Some of them have been investigating the water and apparatus, and I'm sure taking a drink or two. We do need to get some bulk feed, get a couple sacks so we could fill this thing up, just to kind of entice the birds to come in here more often than not, so they could actually use this thing. But for all intents and purposes, this little thing is online, ready to rock and roll. Got our light action here, we got our heater here. Like I said, we got our roosting posts, we got our ramp right there, feeder, watering. Take another look at our ramp right here. Got our ramp set up here that they've been using, obviously, because you can see shit all over it. And then, like I say, they've been in here because, again, there's dried up chicken shit all in here. So, hey, at least that's a sign that they are putting this thing to use. So, yep. Till the next time, we're going to go ahead and conclude this project because technically it's done. other than adding some mulch in here and everything, this thing is pretty much ready to go. If I figure out something as far as nesting boxes, that'll be another little short video just to document the progress, updates, all that good stuff on this thing. But all in all, this is done. So as usual, hit the like button, subscribe, notifications, positive comments, because if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. So I will catch you later. Get ready to get inside because it's still hot out here. I am out. Or in. Yeah, I'm going in. I'm done.